everyone, and welcome to another edition of Jays Talkin. Matt and Andrew here to bring some baseball talk from our living rooms to yours. Just letting all of our fans know the Dunedin Jays shop is open for shopping appointments and curbside pickup. So go to our website, DunedinBlueJays.com, click on the shop tab, and book your shopping appointment today. We're changing it up here a little bit today on Jays Talkin. We've interviewed the players. Now it's time to get some interviews from the front office. Today's guests are Mike Liberatore, the general manager of the Dunedin Blue Jays, and Tyler Murray, who is the current broadcaster and media relations manager for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. Gentlemen, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us, and congratulations on obviously running out of guests entirely.
Yes, big score for you, getting the GM and the DJs. Very good.
Hey, we just wanted to give the front office people some time to get out there a little bit and get their names out there a little bit. Mike, we're going to start with you. You're not related to Matt Liberatore, the former first round pick, but what's been going on during quarantine here in Florida, man?
Oh man, it's a year like no other, like everybody else. So we were, I'd say we're very lucky. We got to play 11 spring training games, so at least we got to open our park and see some baseball. So that was nice, and we spent some time getting ready to be a potential home for Toronto Blue Jays home games. And now that that's in Buffalo, we're kind of in the same boat that everyone else is, kind of transitioning and trying to get ready for the 2021 season.
And Tyler, you're up in New Hampshire right now. The season gets canceled. What's been going on up in New Hampshire during quarantine?
Our team doing everything they can to make the ballpark available as much as we're able. New Hampshire's doing a really good job in terms of limiting cases and hospitalization. So we've been able to run almost 10 different graduations now for high schools and middle schools. So I'm kind of the last production guy standing here, so I'm going to be continuing to run cameras and trying to put on a good show for the folks. And last couple of days has been so great just to kick back and watch our guys in the show. It's been a really refreshing last few days for sure.
Lots of call-ups the last couple of days, so social media has been very, very busy. But let's talk a little bit about Mike. I know you're from Rochester, and Tyler, feel free to chime in afterwards because I'm not sure how close you are, but coming from a minor league baseball city and growing up there in Rochester, how much does minor league baseball mean to some of these cities in the Northeast and Midwest, and even some of those teams who just had, or some of these cities who just had a team for so long?
I mean, for me, that's what I grew up on. Rochester. I was from Rochester, New York, and that was kind of a big minor league market, one of the best minor league towns there was. So we had AAA baseball and AHL hockey. So that's what I grew up on. In terms of baseball, I mean, you're probably closest to Toronto. The Yankees and Mets are 6 hours away. So, like, you want to go see baseball. The AAA team was where it's at. A lot of Orioles fans still there today because at the time they were the AAA affiliate for the Orioles and now the Twins. So, that's what I grew up on was minor league baseball, minor league hockey. So that obviously was a huge influence on me and the industry that I wound up in.
And we grew up going to Portland Sea Dogs games up in Maine every summer. And when I was really young, the New Haven Ravens in Connecticut were the closest team to me. They actually moved here to New Hampshire in 2004, became the Fisher Cats, so full circle, I guess. But, I mean, that's where you develop a love for the sport, where you really get that access, that intimacy. And you guys have it down there in Dunedin, even during spring training, which is what makes that ballpark so special. That closeness and relatability, at least as much as you can get to the big league players. So that's where it all started, really.
Did you both know that you want to do work in baseball growing up, or is it something that you kind of fell into? Mike, if you want to start.
I think growing up, I knew that was where I wanted to go. I didn't go directly into it. I wound up falling into it later. But, I remember when I was in junior high school, so I was, probably 12 or 13, we had the opportunity to job shadow, different roles. Our teachers had set that up, and one of the high demand ones was the baseball team in town, the AAA team, the Red Wings. And I was lucky enough to get to go do that. So I got to, it was a very interesting conversation at winter meetings a few years ago. I was in the elevator with the GM for Rochester, and I got to introduce myself and said, there's no way you would ever remember this, but here's how old we are. 25 years ago, I was like a 13-year-old kid tagging around your offices, following people around. And the person that I job shadowed is still there today. The GM is still there today. So it was very much a small world type of thing that, as a kid, I was kind of, tagging along, seeing how those guys did their jobs, and, eventually wound up falling into the same thing. And, those guys are still there and got to talk to them about it.
And Mike's a baseball lifer, as we know. Embry-Riddle, baseball stud, legendary career. For me, I was never that good, but I realized I wanted to be around the game as much as possible. So I started to notice at a young age that the same byline for every game recap was the same guy. And that's when I found out a beat reporter's position existed. Someone embedded with the team. You go to every game, you travel with them. And, that's as involved as you can get, really, it seems like, without actually playing. So that was kind of my hook into the sports industry, where I wanted to be a writer at first and kind of branched off into broadcasting once I got to college. But that was kind of when I realized you could make a career out of it.
And guys, who were some of your favorite players growing up, Mike? Who were some of the players you were looking up to when you were growing up as a kid?
My number one guy, I was always a huge Frank Thomas fan. That was my guy. When I was a little kid in Little League, I played first base. And as a kid, WGN was on in our market. So there was White Sox games all the time. And he was just kind of the larger-than-life player. So, that was what was on TV, a lot of White Sox games. And, I wound up just becoming a big Frank Thomas fan. That was my guy as a kid.
And my family's all Yankee fans, and I also played first base growing up. So it was ever first base for the Yankees. Tino Martinez was my number one. He's the all-timer. Then even Nick Johnson, the most average player you could possibly think of, he was my guy. And then once it got to Jason Giambi, I'm like, all right, well, let's branch out a little bit. But that was essentially the template for me. So Tino Martinez is my number one.
Tyler, for you talked about it. You're a broadcaster now. Did you have a broadcaster that you kind of looked up to?
Well, it's whoever you grew up listening to. When I talk a lot of baseball guys, it's, who was the voice of their summers. And for us, that was John Sterling. And, I mean, yes, he's been doing it forever. Sometimes he gets a hard time. But it's led to a great fallback for me. If I slip up my words or say something corny, I'll say, well, I'm a John Sterling influenced guy. Like, that's kind of the style you're supposed to do. So he was kind of the go-to guy. I've always thought Joe Buck was hated on for no particular reason, aside from he's so good, so young. So maybe people wish they had that kind of talent, including me. So I always kind of had his back a little bit more than maybe some others. But, yeah, I guess John Sterling's who I grew up on, and Marv Albert certainly on the basketball side.
Yes.
And you gotta love Sterling's crazy, outlandish calls that he has for everybody.
He's still doing it, and he's battling hard, like a lot of broadcasters are right now, announcing from their home stadiums, even when the team, in their case, is down in Washington. I was listening to them a little bit, and a lot of plays you couldn't really tell what was going on because the camera angle wasn't there for him. So everyone's adjusting on the fly.
Yeah, and I saw in the control room, there's about 10 or 12 different screens. They're watching every single kind of angle that you could possibly imagine. So, yes, the broadcasters are having to definitely rethink everything there. So how did you both land your jobs? How did you land the job that you have today, Mike?
So interesting. So I started with the Blue Jays in corporate sponsorships just about 9 years ago, which is, I didn't go directly into baseball. So I was in corporate sales. I lived in Fort Lauderdale. But I had spent some time in this area and always wanted to move back, and had some friends in baseball through connections in college that I kept in touch with, and some of them were scouts and coaches and things like that. And I eventually decided I wanted to get back into sports, and I called all of them and asked how they liked their positions and things like that. And kind of the minor league baseball front office side, like those guys were the most enthusiastic about really liking their role. So I started looking around, and it just kind of fell into place a little bit. There was a role with the Rays in my hometown of Port Charlotte, where we had moved to in Florida. And I called some people that I knew asking about connections. And the person who was doing corporate partnerships for the Blue Jays at the time had just left for a role in hockey, and, the job hadn't been posted yet. So I sent out an email and kind of introduced myself and said, hey, this is who I am. And when I showed up to interview, one old coach of mine was now in the Blue Jays organization. Another coach had a son that I had been a teammate with. So it's kind of a small world. I had some people that would vouch for me, my character and stuff like that. So the interview went well, and started with the Blue Jays back then, and, haven't looked back.
Yeah, in broadcasting, a lot of times it's just about getting that first break to find your way in. And it was winter meetings 2011 leading into the 2012 minor league season. And Daytona Cubs had 2 broadcast interns, unpaid internship, and I applied for it. I later found out I was the 4th choice. 2 guys said no, 1 guy said yes, and then the second slot went to me. So you do need to get lucky in a lot of stages. And then from there, my boss in Daytona recommended me to Dunedin, and I still have Mike as my reference for almost anything I apply for, including New Hampshire, and they helped me get hired up here. So it's just a matter of, for me, networking. Of course, you want to keep in touch with anyone above you and influencers, but the best networking for me has been working hard for the people who hired you, and they can speak fully on your behalf instead of, oh, this kid's tape is good, he sent me some nice emails. It's, I've worked with him, you're going to have a good experience because I've seen it.
And Mike, take us back to the day you were promoted to GM. You were the assistant GM for a while, but how much did that mean to you in your career to become a GM of a team, being a former ball player and being around the sport for so long?
That was an interesting day. The assistant GM process was completely different. The job was open and posted, and application process and interviews and all that. The GM, the day I got promoted, I got called to an off-site meeting, which was during spring training. So in the back of my mind, I'm kind of thinking like, oh man, what did I do now? But at the time, that was right around, so it was 2016, right when we were getting into the process of a renovated stadium and what that was going to entail and things like that. So, Shelby, who's my boss at the time, he was the director overseeing the player development complex and the stadium, and he was GM of the Dunedin Blue Jays. And now this construction project was going to come into play, which was going to take everybody's time. So, it wasn't practical for, him to hold all 4 roles. It just wasn't reasonable. So, I was taken out and said, hey, you've done a great job as the assistant GM. We'd like to offer you the position of general manager of the Dunedin Blue Jays moving forward. So totally caught me off guard. And it was also only a couple weeks before the Dunedin Blue Jays opened up. So I had been doing some of the preparation work as the assistant GM, but wasn't on my radar to be jumping in as the GM at that time. So learned on the fly a little bit, and Shelby had carried that role, helped me through my first year, and it's been great. It was a great opportunity, and loved doing it.
Mike, my understanding was that initially they were looking at the former broadcaster to kind of rise up and be the GM, but I actually stepped aside. I said, look, Mike's got the experience. I want him to have this chance. So I'm glad it's all worked out.
Yeah, I was able to bribe Daytona to get Tyler out the door so that I could get that job.
Tyler,
or else I had no shot.
Tyler, for you and a lot of other minor league broadcasters, you do a lot of different sports, not just baseball, especially in the off season. And right now, you do soccer, hockey. I know you were just doing another baseball tournament down in Louisiana. What is it like? How's it so much different for other sports, broadcasting other sports? How much do you have to change in your mind?
Last year was Forrest Wall actually asked me about this. I thought that was a pretty thoughtful question. And for baseball, the games just come at you every single day. You're dealing with the same team a lot, 3 days in a row. You're, of course, dealing with your same team the entire season. So maybe versus a football broadcast where I have one game to study for, there are up to 50 different new players I need to know about. And then you add on the team that you usually cover. For me, that's Dartmouth football. So that's kind of like a cramming exam for a full week. For baseball, you get into the flow. During spring training, of course, once your roster comes out, you're diving into the prep, you're making sure you know everything. But throughout the course of the season, it's really about talking with players, talking to coaches, and getting those little anecdotes and nuggets you can mix into your broadcast, in addition to the statistics and the trends and what's at stake. So the preparation is probably the most different, whereas on the air, I guess largely the same, except for baseball, it's probably a more relaxed feel than, a hockey game or a basketball game where it's nonstop action, or at least when you're not when the action stops, that's your color guy's turn, right? Baseball, it's kind of a 9-inning conversation in a way.
Is there a hardest sport for you?
It's interesting. A lot of guys I work with say hockey is the toughest, and on the surface, hockey is probably the hardest because if you don't know the numbers, then you have no chance. The puck's zipping around. You need to say who's who. Fans can't necessarily see who's who, and they don't have a lineup card. They don't see who's on deck. It's not like baseball. It's really up to you to tell who has the puck. So once you get into a rhythm, I don't think there's a more enjoyable sport when it's at its peak to call than hockey, for me anyway. But in my early stages, I'm looking down at my sheet. I'm looking up. I'm missing where things are going. And this is 10 years ago, fortunately. But it was I would say that's got the biggest challenge but the highest reward if you can get into a groove.
Mike, you have been around, you said, since 2011. You've been in the area before. How awesome is it to see how Dunedin has progressed since you first started here from the city and the stadium standpoint?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I feel like we were talking about getting a new renovated ballpark pretty much the entire time that I've been here, is back as far as 2011, 2012. So, the city's come a long way. I mean, we've seen so many new places open, and Dunedin's kind of become such a destination spot for tourists and for people to move and live here, because it is such a cool town. So, it's been neat to see that progression and to finally see, the new ballpark, and for people in the community to get to see it, and the people that supported it, the whole way. Everyone wanted the new ballpark to be kind of the crown jewel in Dunedin, and we got it. So, hugely relieved that we got to, at least open it up, have our grand opening, play some games in there. And now next step is going to be kind of, okay, now we want to open it to Dunedin Blue Jays fans and get to play those, those minor league games in the ballpark. I'll be really excited for the first day of that.
What do you think the biggest misconception is? Do you have a lot of people coming to Dunedin Blue Jays games, walking around the stadium, asking you when you're calling a guy up to Dunedin?
Misconception about being a GM. So yeah, that's probably the number one. People that are really into baseball get it, but the emails you get of people wanting to bring you on as a coach because they coach their high school kids, so they should be able to come coach. Or catch bullpens, or get a tryout to come pitch and stuff like that. As a minor league GM, you're completely on the business side. So it's not even in like minor league hockey and stuff. There's still some involvement a lot of places with the player side, but in minor league baseball, it's a completely different job than it is in Major League Baseball, where Major League Baseball is entirely on the player side. Minor league baseball, you're entirely on the business side, so you don't really have any influence over who's on the field or if they bunt or swing away or any of those types of things. So yeah, you get a lot of questions like that, but it's all it's all in good fun.
And gentlemen, this question is for both of you. Give us some of your favorite memories in Dunedin so far.
You want to go first, Tyler, or you want me to take it?
I'll go ahead. I keep going back to the first half championship they clinched when Jose Reyes was rehabbing, and everyone else, it was a hard-fought first half division battle. It was more relief, I think, than anything for the guys who were there the entire time to clinch it, because it got a little dicey down the stretch. But Jose Reyes was popping bottles, going nuts. It was a kids' day game, so it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the latest, and he's going crazy like he won the World Series. So I never forgot that. That was a great moment. And hosting the All-Star game, I mean, all the hard work that goes into an event like that, including the night before where it's kind of executive entertainment night, and then you have Noah Syndergaard in town. And I remember him saying later in the season, with the long flowing hair and throwing 100, he's, that was a fun All-Star game we had. And I was like, wow, Noah Syndergaard said that? Crazy. So that was, for our small staff like we have, and maybe an underrated ballpark at the time, now I think it gets the credit it deserves. It was cool to put on an event like that.
Those are two good ones. I totally forgot about the Jose Reyes being there and leading the bottle popping for the clinching on the day game. That's a good one. That brings me back. The All-Star game was another good one of the best All-Star home run derbies. I mean, I'm biased for what we saw, but I remember Javi Baez putting on a great show. Maikel Franco was in that, Stephen Piscotty. God, I mean, that whole derby was loaded. So that was a good one. Obvious memory for me is when we won the split FSL title. 2017 with Vlad, Bo, Cavan, all those guys. Just how that worked out, where the hurricane condensed it to one round. We're all trying to get our houses boarded up, knowing that the hurricane's coming, the season's ending. We lost the first game of the series, so we had to go on the road and win a doubleheader to win the championship. And we won both games in comeback fashion with some of the craziest plays that you could think of. I think Biggio and Vlad both homered in those games. There was a play that we really needed at the end of, I want to say the 8th inning, and Juan Kelly was our first baseman over the time, went over the fence, almost had the ball in his glove. And when he hit the fence, it shot out of his glove up into the air, and Kevin Biggio ran over and caught it out of the air, which was like we had to have that out. So that whole thing, getting to celebrate, see the guys celebrate on the field, and then we knew the season was over that day and everyone was going home. So it was such a weird environment to be in. But that one sticks out, obviously.
Tyler, for you started in Dunedin and were owned by the Toronto Blue Jays themselves, obviously. And then you go to New Hampshire where you're independently owned. Same organization though. Is there any differences or at all to those two experiences?
Less free merchandise when you're not owned by the big league club. You don't have bluejays.com as your email domain. And those are probably the two biggest things that I can think of. And I'm not sure if it's team ownership or just the fact that the complex is down there. A lot less rehabbers in New Hampshire. Dunedin makes a ton of sense. Buffalo makes a ton of sense. So we don't get a lot of them. Steve Pearce, we had a couple of years ago, right before he got healthy, and hit a couple of walk-off grand slams for the Blue Jays, which was ridiculous. But we're definitely more minor league, kind of that hometown, homegrown, bring the family out, have a nice time, regardless of what the affiliate is, because, of course, we're in Red Sox Nation here in New Hampshire. So we've been impressed with how much people here have gone from rooting for the Portland Sea Dogs, the Boston affiliate, when they play us, to rooting for the Fisher Cats, because we've been here now almost 20 years. So that's been nice to see.
Mike, a ton of the business owners in the town. Everywhere we go, everybody asks us, how's Mike doing? What's Mike doing? How important is the community impact and the partnership with the community when you're working in this realm?
I think it's huge. I mean, they're the key for us to getting that community support. If the leaders in the community support the Dunedin Blue Jays, then the rest of the community comes along, and you guys have done a great job with all the community relations. I mean, we're involved with everything from schools to every charity. We're out there all the time with such a small group. So, and Dunedin is geographically, and just population, it's really small. It's a small municipality. It's about 30,000 people. So our little downtown core is very small. So, we're kind of boxed in with bigger cities of Clearwater and Tampa and places like that. So, I think that was one of the important things about the new ballpark, is really giving the people that are in Dunedin, that are part of Dunedin, something to be really proud of. And, the support's been great all along. And, can't say enough about how those people stepped up and really wanted to make sure the county and the state knew how important it was for, the Blue Jays to stay there for the next 25 years.
So the biggest thing about minor league baseball, obviously, the players always they come and go every year. But you always have the promos that gets the fans coming back in touch with the team. Do you guys have a favorite promo that you have done?
Well, I still have my cherished Vlad Jr., Vlad Sr. bobblehead from what you guys did down in Dunedin. And we tried to do a version of that with Vlad, Bo, and Kevin. He had to collect them all to interlock, and at the base it made the diamond, I think. So that was pretty cool. I mean, I'm not sure how I felt about after the first one, seeing it immediately on eBay for like hundreds of dollars, but you guys know how that goes. So I just like a good giveaway that people are actually going to have, or actually going to use. Like I've seen, oven mitts and aprons, and like, well, I mean, don't people already have that? Like, are they coming to a ballpark to get their go-to oven mitt? Like, maybe not, but I do like a good collectible.
I've used my Fire Up the Grilly, Jason Grilly apron in the kitchen sometimes.
So there's a demographic. You're good.
It's me. Like, I mean, I've got it. So if I'm going to cook, it's going on. Yeah, I'll think back. Like some of the fun one, like I always love the superhero nights just because the whole staff buys in and costumes up. So it's funny to see what the fans, come to the park in terms of costumes, and, what the staff do is just as entertaining. So those are always great. I'm partial to, our food nights have probably been our biggest one. So our wing nights, obviously super popular, and then beer, bacon, and fireworks. Really hard one to execute, but we get so many vendors, so many fans. It turns the game into kind of one big party. So those have stuck out. And the Vlad Junior Senior bobblehead was a really cool experience, especially for the people that remembered back to the 4 games that we had Vlad Sr. Play in Dunedin, which is, relatively at the end of his career. He played 4 games, hit 4 homers. It was pretty entertaining 4 days. And he was there on a wing night, a promotional night, which was one of our biggest games anyways. And he hit 2 homers that night. So,
well, Mike, you mentioned superhero night. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is me from 2013, because Ron Burgundy is my superhero. And I think you guys made me walk around the concourse just like yelling out Burgundy quotes. It was a time. We had a good night that night for sure.
I don't think anyone made you. I think you just did that.
No, that doesn't sound like me. That sounds like something I was asked to do. But yeah.
Yes, we obviously got very loose with the term superhero for Tyler's costume.
You were Captain Planet that year, as I recall.
I was. Thank God no one has a picture of that to display. Because we don't need to see a tight light blue spandex costume to be Captain Planet. Although the wig was the most hair I've ever had, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, those things those superhero nights were a lot of fun. And Tyler couldn't just sit in the booth with his costume on. That would have been a waste. What was your co-host? Your co-host, I feel like, was like Fred Flintstone or something.
I think Al Hernandez was indeed Fred Flintstone. Barney Rubble would have been a much easier costume. Now that I think about it, much better.
Mike always has been rocking some really good costumes around the office. Even when we dressed up for Halloween, he had a great Mr. Rogers costume, so he busts that one out every now and then. He's got I feel like he's just got a closet full of costumes at his house.
They're one-time use, man. They go. I had to shave my beard for the Mr. Rogers one, so that hurt, but it was back about 8 hours later.
And that's how it happens, man. So we know that one of the biggest things in minor league baseball, especially during games, is you're preparing for absolutely anything. What are some of the craziest things you guys seen happen in a minor league game that you couldn't write in a book?
Ooh, couldn't write in a book. Well, I'm not going to say them on your podcast, so I couldn't write them in a book. But I will give you the wildest things I've seen. Santiago Espinal got his first career hit yesterday. He stole home to win a ball game for us in the 10th inning last year. That was wild. We saw one time in Dunedin where everybody thought that the other team had scored a run. After the third out had been recorded, a guy just casually rounding third just came all the way home in to score, and for some reason the umpire counted it, and nobody noticed except Aaron Sanchez, who was charting pitches. He comes flying into the broadcast booth, says that run shouldn't count. I'm running a commercial for God knows what. And I said, please tell the guys over there, Bill Christie and the legendary crew. So Aaron Sanchez took a run off the board for, I believe, the Tampa Yankees for trying to pull a fast one on us. So that was awfully interesting. But it was down there you saw a lot of wild things. And Mike, that story you just told about Kevin Biggio catching a ricochet pop-up in a playoff game, that must be up there.
Yeah, that one sticks out. A couple other ones. We had lightning strike the stadium on a kids' day, and it wasn't cloudy and it wasn't raining, so it was completely unexpected. So it was, and this was about a week after the Texas Rangers had a similar situation happen, and it cleared the field, and it was crazy. And so that happened to us. Like the first lightning strike hits, all the kids are in the stands, and people started kind of running around, and I thought like, okay, don't panic, don't run. And then a second one came right behind it. And I looked, and I don't know where the players went or how they got from like center field to a dugout so fast. But they all disappeared. Our radio guy got his laptop fried because the laptop hit, or the lightning hit the top of the stadium. So luckily he was okay, I think, but his headset and laptop took some damage, and the field cleared immediately. And it was super strange. We had hundreds of kids huddled in the concourse. The sun's still out. It was weird. Another one that comes to mind is we had our shortstop and center fielder collide. It wasn't a good situation. We had to have an ambulance come on the field. But what made it strange was before the game, our manager had filled out the lineup card, and where he wrote the starters, in the bench spots, he accidentally wrote the starters' names over. He did not write the bench players' names in. And in the Florida State League rules, it was if the guys weren't on the lineup card, they couldn't play, even if they were on the active roster. So when our manager went out there to make a substitution and put a different outfielder in, the umpires told him no, that he didn't have any eligible bench players. We didn't know, in the stands that this was going on. So we've got a guy basically like concussed in the outfield with an ambulance rolling out. And then our manager is having like just a absolute screaming match with the umpire. We can't figure out how it's connected at all until after the game. So what wound up happening was we had to put a pitcher in center field. It was Carlos Ramirez went in to play center field. And then of course in a one-run game, his spot in the lineup came up in the last inning. So I will say that he got some serious hacks in. He did not get cheated, but he did not get a hit. I think he struck out. But it was a surreal scene. Everyone's texting like, "What is going on?" Like we've got paramedics out there. We've got arguments with the umpire. Nobody knew what was happening. It was a scene for sure.
I mean, the only other one I have is I was at the scene of the crime for the Three Blind Mice umpire rejecting the music guy in Daytona game. So, I mean, you can just YouTube it. It's music guy, Derek Dye gets ejected. And it was my idea. That's kind of the thing I've hidden for almost 10 years now. But we uploaded new music before that game started. I said, because in hockey, as you know, Mike, they'll play Three Blind Mice when the refs come out. So umpires don't have as good of a sense of humor, though. So he got tossed.
No, and that is an all-time minor league YouTube clip. Totally recommend watching it. It was the reaction of the broadcasters when he gets tossed is priceless.
You can also never forget we had a 4-hour game last year with the one umpire with 3 innings left, and that luckily the team cut him some slack. He was just calling outs from home plate. Just somebody would steal and he would just make a call. It was wild times.
Yep, we had to send both umpires back to the umpires room. It's like 100 degrees. The game is a marathon. We didn't really know what exactly was up other than we kind of felt like one of the umpires was sick. It was actually his first game in the Florida State League. He had just gotten called up. Didn't take the heat at Jack Russell Stadium real well. So they both went to the umpires room. We got the trainers to check on the umpire. So they changed gear. The other umpire took the home plate gear, and he had to do the home plate and the bases by himself. And then the rest of the game, like the last 3 or 4 innings, dragged on for probably a solid 2 hours. So that poor guy, we almost lost 2 umps that day.
Tyler, for you, how nice is it to come to spring training in Dunedin and start to see some of those former guys that you've broadcasted for, been around the clubhouse with, and gotten to know as a person, and then getting to see them play on kind of a big league level?
Yeah, it was really cool. A lot of us were kind of experiencing that first major league, quote unquote, time together because as good as Bo, Vlad, and Kevin were, I mean, Vlad and Bo were like 19 and 20, so they weren't in big league spring training as far as I remember the previous year. So just cool to see them do their thing. And then to be able to reconnect with a lot of the staff members and coworkers I had back in the day from Dunedin. That was probably the coolest part. Bill Christie, he was very proud of me, the PA voice of formerly Florida Auto Exchange Stadium. And now just to be able to hang out with him again in a different context was great. And Mike Wilner and Ben Wagner, they made me feel like equals, which I'm very much not. But to be on their level and to be on the airwaves with those guys was very, very cool. So it was a lot of fun.
And we talked a little bit about it earlier, but can you guys talk a little bit about Bo, Vlad, and Kevin, that team coming up, along with Coach John Schneider? And did you guys know that they were going to be special?
So we had them first. I can say the hype, specifically the Bo and Vlad hype. Kevin probably wasn't as hyped up coming up from Lansing as the other two at the time. So, yeah, you knew they were going to be special. It was a huge thing. Bo was hitting over 400 in Lansing, I think, at the time. So you knew it was a big deal. Obviously, we had a lot of media. And a lot of guys put in requests to interview Bo and Vlad. And then when they showed up, they would see Biggio's name up on the scoreboard, and you get a lot of, hey, is he related to, like – and so Kevin had to kind of jump in as on those interviews as kind of the third guy quite a few times. And luckily, Kevin is one of the nicest people you could ever meet, and was always awesome about it. And then as the season went on, I mean, Cavan, the end of the year with us, the playoffs, like he really started to hit for more power, and then that really took off the next year in New Hampshire. So yeah, it was, I mean, I think we had those conversations at the time. We knew that team was special. We knew we were really lucky to get to watch those guys play together. It was such a privilege to come to the park every night and see just so much talent on the field. You're not going to get to see too many teams like that. So it was a lot of fun. And then Schneider is obviously the best for anyone that knows him. I've never gotten as a minor league GM, you work with other teams' coaching staffs a lot, navigating weather situations and delays and field use and stuff like that. I mean, almost every team in the league reached out at some point unsolicited and said, your coaching staff is awesome. Like, Schneider's great. Like, when I had to tell everyone, like, hey, Schneids isn't back this year, all the other GMs were disappointed because he's such a good guy, so easy to deal with. He was fun for me to deal with as a GM, and still get to talk to him. So, Schneids is the best. I don't know if our social media is like at restraining order level with Schneider, like New Hampshire is. They've gone to a special level of Schneider, John Schneider appreciation posts. But yeah, Schneider is the man, and that was a fun seeing Bo, Vlad, Cavan. It's fun to less than 2 years later they were all from the time they were in A ball with us. Less than 2 years later they're in the show as Toronto's infield. So crazy how quick it happens.
Yeah, we had to change John Schneider's apartment after his first month in New Hampshire, and we volunteered to actually move the furniture, and that's a bond that lasts for life. Okay. So, I mean, we've all talked about how good Bo, Vlad, and Cavan are, but I've been thinking about the trajectory of them in terms of how good they were and how good they were supposed to be. So here's how I've seen it. When they first got here 2018, it was Vlad and Bo even, but then that Montreal home run happened, and it's like, whoa, Vlad is way up here. And that kind of played out during the season. Bo was high 280. He was great, of course, but Vlad hit 402 his whole year here. And then Cavan Biggio, he wins the MVP, almost breaks our home run record. But now it was interesting. We started getting so many interviews, as you know, but everyone wanted to ask Bo about what's it like to play with Vlad. And I'm like, you should probably ask Bo about how good he is, because they're really not that far off. I know it's hard to see right now, but they're going to be neck and neck. And you look at it now, I mean, I know Bo's a little banged up, I guess. Vlad got off to a bit of a slow start, home run yesterday, but I just think, I mean, right now it's neck and neck again, it feels like. So it's just great to see. It's not competition, I don't think, but there's just like a nice little edge they seem to have, continuing to get better, continuing to grow. And it's not anymore just like this one amazing guy. It really is this group now, and they seem to be building on each other and feeding off each other that way.
Do you have a quick, we talked about these big guys, but do you have a quick under the radar guy in the organization that maybe the fans don't know about that they can look forward to seeing with the Blue Jays or with another organization in the future maybe? So
I'm going to go two in a row, Mike. Sorry. I think now with 30 guys on the roster, at least to start the season, and the way things are, those kind of players who are good at everything but not maybe amazing at one particular thing, there's room for them now. There's more of a space for them than ever, just because you need some depth these days. I think Santiago Espinal fits that mold perfectly. Like, I couldn't have told you, we saw him for 2 years here, I couldn't have said what his very best skill was. I asked him that in a pregame interview. He didn't have one skill that he's great at, but he's so good at everything. So guys who fall in that category for me, somebody like Forrest Wall rings a bell. He was traded straight to us from AA, the Rockies Yard Goats, but so you guys didn't see him down there, but he's just the kind of guy who's good at pretty much everything. And he came up as a second baseman. Now he's a center fielder. Santiago Espinal, infielder, as we know, they had him out in center field last year here in New Hampshire. So they're trying to find these versatile guys, trying to find space for them. And I think Forrest Wall, if he continues on his trajectory, he might fall into that category.
Yeah, Espinal, I mean, that reminds me of when we got him. I still remember the trade with Steve Pierce. So Santiago Espinal was supposed to report to Dunedin. So it's obviously, shocking for, the guys when, you get traded, you're probably not a guy who's in the rumor mill and stuff like that. So He was supposed to report to Dunedin before a game. His flight got delayed. He showed up pretty much after the game was over. Everybody had cleared out. So he gets to the clubhouse, and I think it was, me and the trainer, I think, were the only two people left there. And he kind of knew he had hotel reservations, but not where and stuff like that. So, I wound up driving him over to the hotel. And, for those that haven't been to Dunedin, it's kind of an older, town in the summer. So we drove down Main Street, and I was like, hey, this is Main Street for Dunedin. And he's like, oh, so this is where everybody goes out. And I was like, well, like everybody like 3 times your age. That's where they go out. You guys might find someplace else to go. So he was a super guy to meet him. You could still tell he was kind of, getting over the, being surprised to be traded and upended in the middle of the season. And, hey, pack your stuff. You're going to a different affiliate, a different city. But yeah, really, really liked Espinal, super guy. He was a really good player for us too. Our under the radar guys, his cover is blown. I think Kirk, we can't use him anymore. He's now Alejandro Kirk's a cult hero now. I remember one of our video guys telling me, watching a Gulf Coast League game, that at the time Alejandro Kirk was in Bluefield. He's like, wait till you guys get Kirk. Kirk is awesome. You're gonna love Kirk. And we did. Alejandro Kirk was an experience. Some of the other guys, I mean, we'll get to see if we see them this year. I mean, there's a lot of pitchers out there. Some of them are in the player pool. Guys like Ty Tice or Travis Bergen, like they might get to see some time this year. I mean, they're both very good. And then some guys we're not going to get to see till next year, like guys that were really good for us, like Brad Wilson in the bullpen or Max Castillo as a starter. We won't get to see those guys probably until New Hampshire next year. So, but with the 60 man pool, a couple of those guys got to make it, and we might get to see them, play this season.
One final question to wrap us up here. Do you have any advice for people who are trying to get into sports going forward?
Well, you've done it more recently than I have, Andrew. So why don't you answer that question? No, it's something you have to get into because you love the sport and you love the grind and you like people because you're around people nonstop, almost literally. I mean, we're talking, if we have a game at 6:30, we get here at 9 a.m. and we leave at 10 p.m. or later, and you're relying on everyone you work with to be able to have your back and pick up slack where it's necessary. So it's, for a lot of people, I think I'm one of the lucky ones. I know I am because I get to watch every single game, every single pitch because that's my job. But depending on what part of the sport you get into, sometimes it's not so much about the game itself that you're involved in. Sometimes it's about the team you're a part of. And that team means, who's on the field, but who you have in the front office as well. So if your mindset can be, I want to do whatever I can to make my team better, help us get people in the stands, help build excitement about whoever we are on social media or just in the stadium, I think that elevates you and it elevates the people around you as well. So it's kind of a tougher mindset to come into, and I didn't have it when I started. I was like, man, our Daytona Cubs team, we're like 20 games under 500. This is a bummer, but that's not what it's really about. So I think if you come in with the energy like a lot of young folks do, that's really all you need.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it. I think, working on the team side, that's a huge part of it. I would say, there's so many ways to get in to sports in different ways. I mean, sports are, they're all businesses, they're all companies. I mean, every, team's got, an accountant, you've got lawyers, you've got administrative people, you've got marketers, so you can still go to school and kind of pursue the things that you're good at and then find the way to transition those into sports. If you ever go to winter meetings and you're at the trade show, all these different companies are companies that spend their time. You're not necessarily working for one team, but you're a vendor that does business with, 50 teams, the people that do the technology on our scoreboard and renovate our stadiums and all that type of stuff. So, almost every career path that you look at can be transitioned into sports in some way. So, and then kind of identifying, where your best fit is if you want to be, on the player side of things in the coaching and analytics. And, that's kind of one skill set, I wish I had learned, statistics and things like that as well as the guys who get to do that now. And then the business side of it is a completely different skill set. So, be aware of which path that you want to take. So And like Tyler said, and I said, networking is such a huge part of it. Like if you do good work, if you work hard, people will notice that, and it'll help you, down the road. Even when you think people don't see it, they do.
Thank you
Can
so
we
much.
talk about how Tyler, before we end, that Tyler big leagued me and didn't let me get on the air in New Hampshire a couple years ago? So Tyler, I just want to say, so when Tyler was in Dunedin, everyone that lived in the city of Dunedin or worked in it got to co-host on the radio. They were interviewed at some point. So I never did, because that wasn't my thing. But when I went to New Hampshire and got to see some games, and Tyler showed me around. So he invited me to go on the air, and I said, that's great. I'll do it. I'm up there by myself just to watch some baseball games. But then, the first game didn't get on. Second game, okay, it's the fifth inning, the sixth inning. I think, okay, it's got to happen at the end here. And then about the seventh inning, I got big leagued. I got double-A'd is what happened. They pulled a double-A card against my A-ball card.
I mean, I could give a million excuses here. But the first and foremost is we have a lot of corporate partners who we love, and part of their full season packages are outfield sign, maybe an ad in the program, and an inning on the radio interview by yours truly. I mean, imagine the value on that. So it's a matter of course, I call the action, and then between pitches, we ask questions about Sherwin-Williams paint, Cam Franks, Sam Adams beverages. So it's a great time, but unfortunately, that particular weekend, we were jam-packed with good corporate messaging, Mike. So there was no time for you.
So Tyler said I got to pay up if I want to get on the air, basically.
Well, look, when you come back, we'll plan it out better, I promise. But I do apologize. You're not one to hold grudges, Mike, as we know, so we'll be fine.
Open up your checkbook, Mike, if you're heading up to New Hampshire sometime soon to get up on the on the air that time. But we want to thank you guys so much for taking some time to join us and talk baseball and talk Dunedin and just talk about pretty much whatever's on our minds right here. So we just want to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, fans, for tuning in to another edition of Jays Talkin'. Matt, Andrew, Tyler, and Mike signing off.